I would like to call the organizational meeting Tuesday, January 7th, 2025 at 6:30 to order. Could you please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. At this time, I would like to invite our new board members, Mr. Burrow, Mr. Burns, and Mrs. Rotarius, if you could please stand and cite the Board of Education oath of office, and you can do it together.
It's in your packet.
Okay,
It's the last
sorry.
page.
Last page?
Sorry, should have referenced.
Russ found it, I'm like,
You did have it memorized?
Just in case
You're
you
right.
didn't memorize it.
do the homework.
Okay, ready?
Yes.
Okay.
I do solemnly swear or affirm that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of this state, and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of office of member of the Board of Education of Almont Community Schools according to the best of my ability.
Thank you very much, and congratulations again to all of you. Thank
Thank
you
you.
so much. At this time, we'll do roll call. Mr. Wade?
Here.
Mr. Burrow?
Here.
Mr. Burns?
Here.
Mrs. Rotarius?
Here.
Ms. Smith?
Here.
Ms. Frederickson? Absent. Okay, we have 5 board members present. We have a quorum. As far as approval of agenda, there are no additions or deletions. At this time, the reorganization of the board. The motions for the office of President, Vice President, Secretary, and Treasurer will be offered and voted upon. The President will be chosen first, then the President will assume the chair to conduct the election of the other positions. Do we have nominations for the Board of Education President?
Mrs. Vaughn.
Yes, Mr. Wade.
I would like to nominate Janaea Smith as president for the 2025 calendar year.
Are there any, oh, I'm sorry. Oh, no, that's correct. Are there any other nominations for president? If there are none, then a board member needs to make the motion to close nominations and cast votes for the new president.
Mrs. Vaughn.
Mr. Wade.
I move that nominations be closed and votes cast for Janaea Smith as president of the Almont School Board for the 2025 calendar year.
Support.
Support.
We will now conduct a roll call vote on the nomination of Janaea Smith for the school board president for the 2025 calendar year. Mr. Wade.
Aye.
Mr. Burrow.
Aye.
Mr. Burns.
Aye.
Mrs. Rotarius.
Aye.
Ms. Smith.
Aye.
Ms. Frederickson? Absent. Okay. We have 5. Motion passed, and Janaea Smith is the 2025 President of the Almont Board of Education. The President will now assume the chair and conduct the remaining nominations.
Thank you. Do we have any nominations for Vice President?
Ms. Smith,
Mrs. Rotarius.
I'd like to nominate Mr. Burns.
Are there any other nominations for Vice President? If there are none, then a board member will need to make a motion to close the nominations and cast a vote for the new Vice President.
Ms. Smith, I would like to nominate Mr. Burns as Vice President for the 2025 calendar year.
Excellent. What?
Are there any other nominations for Vice President?
Close.
Close. I move that nominations be closed and votes cast for Mr. Burns as Vice President of the Almont School Board for the 2025 calendar year.
Support.
There's a motion and support. We will now cast a roll call vote on nominations of Justin Burns for Vice President for the 2025 calendar year. Mrs. Rotarius.
Yeah.
Mr. Burrow.
Aye.
Aye.
Mr. Wade.
Aye.
Ms. Frederickson, absent. Mr. Burns.
Aye.
Mrs. Smith. Aye. Motion passed, and Justin Burns, the 2025 Vice President of the Almont Board of Education. Do we have any nominations for Secretary?
Mrs. Smith,
Mr. Burns.
I would like to nominate Russell Burrow as Secretary for the 2025 calendar year.
Are there any other nominations for Secretary? If there are none, then a board member will need to make the motion to close the nominations and cast votes for the new secretary.
Mrs. Smith,
Mr. Burns.
I move that nominations be closed and votes cast for Russell Barrow as Secretary of Almont Board of Education for the 2025 calendar year.
Support.
Motion and support. We will now conduct a roll call vote on the nomination of Russell Burrow for secretary for the 2025 calendar year. Roll call vote, Mr. Burns.
Aye.
Mrs. Rotaria.
Aye.
Mr. Burrow.
Aye.
Mrs. Frederickson, absent. Mr. Wade.
Aye.
Mrs. Smith. Aye. Motion passed, and Russell Burrow is the 2025 secretary of the Almont Board of Education. Do we have any nominations for treasurer?
Mrs. Smith,
Mr. Burns.
I would like to nominate Mr. Wade as Treasurer for the 2025 calendar year.
Are there any other nominations for treasurer? There are none, then we will need a board member to make a motion to close nominations and cast the votes for the new treasurer.
Mrs. Smith,
Mr. Burns.
I move the nominations closed and votes cast for James Wade as Treasurer of the Almont Board of Education for the 2025 calendar year.
Support.
Motion and support. The secretary will now call for roll call vote on the nomination of James Wade for treasurer for the 2025 calendar year.
Mrs. Frederickson, absent. Mr. Burns.
Aye.
Mr. Burrow. Aye. Mr. Wade.
Aye.
Ms. Rotarius.
Aye.
Ms. Smith.
Aye. Motion passed, and James Wade is the 2025 treasurer of the Almont Board of Education. So moving on, we'll be going to approval of board policies.
Mrs. Smith.
Mr. Burrow.
I move that the Board of Education adopt all bylaws and policies of the previous Board of Education, subject to revision as necessary.
Support.
Motion and support. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries.
Establishing location, time, and dates of the Board of Education meetings. Mrs. Smith.
Mr. Burrow.
I move that the meetings of the Almont Board of Education will be held in the auditorium at Almont High School, 4701 Holland Road, Almont, Michigan, at 7 p.m. on the fourth Monday of each month, except for the months of May and December. The dates of the meetings of the Board of Education be as follows: 7 p.m., January 27, 2025, February 24th, 2025, March 24th, 2025, April 28th, 2025, May 19th, 2025, June 23rd, 2025, July 28th, 2025, August 25th, 2025, September 22nd, 2025, October 27th, 2025, November 24th, 2025, December 15th, 2025. And further, that committee, informational, and special meetings of the board shall be held in the Media Center of Almont Middle School at 4624 Kidder Road, Almont, Michigan, unless otherwise noted on agenda, subject to call.
Support.
Motion and support. Any discussion?
Mrs. Smith?
Mrs. Von Heltmeyer.
I was wondering, are potentially making the recommendation to move up our monthly board meetings to 6:30 p.m. start time? If that works for the rest of the board, as you all also put in a day's work, and then coming into the meeting, sometimes our nights get long.
Mhm.
So just a consideration to bump that up to 6:30.
Any discussion?
That works for me.
Works for me.
Mr. Burrow, you're just going to want to state that you're going to amend that motion to state that the meetings are at 6:30.
Mrs. Smith,
Mr. Burrow.
I'd like to amend the motion for the time, the start time of a board meeting to be at 6:30 rather than 7 p.m.
We would need support again.
Support.
Motion and support. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. We are now naming of depositories.
Mrs. Smith.
Mr. Wade.
I move the Board of Education name the following depositories for the general fund, food service fund, payroll, account, trust and agency funds, ProCare, athletics, 2016 refunding, 2021 Series A, 2014 sinking fund, accounts payable account, 2021 Series B, and 2013 refunding, and Choice One, Tri-County Bank, hereinafter referred to as banks, that the banks are hereby designated as trustees on behalf of the Almont Community School, hereinafter referred to as local unit, and authorized to accept the local unit surplus funds for deposit as defined in Michigan Public Act 367 of the Public Acts of 1982, hereinafter referred to as Act or other appropriate regulation. That the treasurer, superintendent, and administrator of finance of the local unit be and are hereby authorized to enter into a trust agreement with the banks providing for the investment of surplus funds in accordance with the Act or the other appropriate regulation. That any agreements, authorizations, or directions required to be signed or given in connection with the intent of this resolution may be signed or given by treasurer, superintendent of schools, and administrator of finance, whose signatures shall be duly certified to the banks, and the banks hereby are authorized to accept any surplus funds for investment in accordance with the Act and any agreement entered into between the local unit and bank in connection herewith. That the authority given by this resolution is in addition to and shall not amend or repeal any depository or investment authority granted by any other resolution of the local unit.
Support.
Motion and support. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Authorization of officials to sign checks.
Mrs. Smith.
Mr. Wade.
I move the Board of Education authorize the following officials to sign checks for the appropriate accounts, at the same time removing all previous signees from the accounts as noted in the attachment to be labeled X and attachment to the official minutes of this meeting. Miscellaneous accounts, including General Fund, Food Service Fund, 2016 refunding, 2021 Series A, accounts payable, ProCare, athletics, 2021 Series B, 2014 sinking fund, and refunding 2013. Part 105, Officers of the Board. Board President, Janaea Smith. Vice President, Justin Burns. Secretary, Russell Burrow. Treasurer, James Wade. Other, Superintendent, Kimberly Von Hiltmeyer. Part 205, Payroll and Withholding Accounts. Or is this two motions?
No, you're still on the first one. That's still.
Okay.
Yep, the first one.
Payroll and withholding accounts, Superintendent Kimberly Von Hiltmeyer, Board President Janaea Smith, Vice President Justin Burns, Board Secretary Russell Burrow, Board Treasurer James Wade.
Support?
Motion and support. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Now we'll be on the second part.
Mrs. Smith.
Mr. Wade.
I move the Board of Education authorize the use of facsimile signatures for checks under $5,000 drawn on Choice 1 for accounts payable and payroll.
Support.
Motion and support. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Authorization for transferring funds and receiving account balances.
Mrs. Smith.
Mr. Wade.
I move the Board of Education authorize the Superintendent Kimberly Von Hiltmeyer, the Administrator of Finance, Board of Education President Janaea Smith, Board Secretary Russell Burrow, or Board Treasurer James Wade to transfer funds to and from all accounts.
Support.
Motion and support. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Second part.
Mrs. Smith.
Mr. Wade.
I move the Board of Education authorize the Administrator of Finance to receive account balances for all accounts.
Support?
Motion and support. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Authorization to invest surplus funds.
Mrs. Smith.
Mr. Wade.
I move the Board of Education authorize the Administrator of Finance as the designated agent of the Board Treasurer to invest debt retirement funds, building and site funds, building and site sinking funds, or general funds of the district in accordance with MCLA 380.1223, following generally accepted business practices, and in the best interest of the district.
Support?
Motion and support. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. We are on establishing standing committees.
Mrs. Smith?
Mr. Burrow.
I move the following board committees be established as standing committees for the 2025 calendar year. Building and Site Committee, Finance Committee, Personnel Committee, Curriculum Committee, and Policy Committee.
Support.
There's motion and support. Any discussion?
Mrs. Smith,
Mr. Burns.
I would like the board to consider reducing down to 3 committees: finance, curriculum, and policy.
Any other discussion from the board?
Just to be clear,
Mr. Burrow?
for the community, Mrs. Smith. Just to be clear for the community, personnel and building and site issues would be moved to the finance committee, both of them?
Correct. They would fall under finance if it was, relevant to that. And then we can also do, as we had discussed in December, which was to do ad hoc committees as needed. So the ad hoc building and site right now would be appropriate with having sinking fund dollars in our account, or moving forward if there was ever another sinking fund or a bond or anything like that. So we can always form an ad hoc committee. Mr. Wade, I think you were going to say something as
Yes, Mrs. Smith. My compromise was from the 5 to the 4. We have 1 employee, so the personnel committee should just be an ad hoc committee to discuss contract negotiations with the superintendent and any personnel issues that may arise that they need to go through. So that can be a timely, as needed. Because considering we do still have sinking fund dollars and we have projects that need to be completed, that type of thing, my recommendation was until that such time, as we have depleted those, that we keep the standing committee of the building and site. So we don't have to set up meetings. It may not be something that is on every meeting for a building and site, but it's in place, ready to go versus.
Starting an ad hoc.
Yeah.
I'm fine with
And then as we
I
deplete
like
that,
that.
we get to the end of next year, or, we can always readjust.
I'm okay with
I
that.
like that, I'm okay with that.
Okay, that sounds good. So, Mr. Burrow, do you want to amend your motion?
Yes, I would like to amend the motion. Mrs. Smith?
Mr. Burrow.
I would move the following board committees be established as standing committees for the 2025 calendar year. The Finance Committee, the Curriculum Committee, the Policy Committee, will be eliminating the Personnel Committee, and the Building and Site Committee will be ad hoc to start the year.
No, we're going to keep, he
keep
was
it.
recommending keeping it
Keep
and
it.
then
Personnel
changing
ad
it as needed.
And Personnel, so Personnel Committee will be ad hoc,
Yes,
and then the Building and Site Committee will keep.
yes. New motion on the floor.
Support.
Motion and support. Any discussion?
Mrs. Smith?
Mr. Wade.
With the personnel committee going ad hoc, we still would want, my recommendation would still, we still follow procedures we have done. Anytime we have a hire, we upload the resumes, all that, so we're just have checks and balances and make sure we have qualifications, all that stuff is gone through, but it's not going to require what we have done.
Okay.
Any other discussion? Motion and support. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Setting a Board of Education compensation.
Mrs. Smith?
Mr. Wade.
I move the wages for members of the Board of Education be set at $20 per meeting, up to a maximum of 24 meetings per year, with the Board of Officers to receive the following additional payment: President, $100, Vice President, $100, Secretary, $100, Treasurer, $100.
Support.
Motion and support. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Nomination to the MASB Delegate Assembly.
Mrs. Smith?
Mr. Burrow.
Can I get some clarity on who we would be nominating there?
You just nominate somebody.
Okay. Mrs. Smith,
Mr. Burrow.
I move that the Board of Education nominate Janaea Smith for the MASB Delegate Assembly, and this board directs the administration to forward this nomination immediately to the MASB.
Oh, I see that one.
Support.
Motion and support. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Representative for the Intermediate School District Board of Education.
Mrs. Smith,
Mr. Burrow.
the same clarity question on this.
I think in the past, wasn't this a secretary that we had in for that? No, I thought it was. I'm being serious.
Oh.
No.
Typically,
I
this
think
is
Katie
where,
looks very interested.
She does look interesting.
Mrs. Smith, typically this has been
That's great.
where one of the veteran board members has assigned it to a rookie board member.
Okay,
There we
I
go.
feel like Katie is interested.
All right, let's do it.
All right. Mrs. Smith,
Mr. Burrow.
I move that the Board of Education appoint Katie Rotarius as the Almont School Board Representative at the Lapeer County Intermediate School District Board of Education meetings.
Support.
Motion and support. Any discussion?
Mrs. Smith.
Mr. Wade.
Just for clarity, the one that we had attended was, it was a Wednesday in May, and they did their awards. So the Ed Tech was there presenting their awards. So you get to see potentially some Almont students as they did their awards.
Okay,
So
cool.
that's the one requirement that you want to, so it's 1 day a
Okay.
year.
I like it. Sounds good.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Designation of individuals responsible for posting meetings.
Mrs. Smith,
Mr. Burrow.
I move that the Board of Education have the executive assistant be appointed as the person responsible for posting meetings of the Almont Board of Education.
Support.
Motion and support. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. We're now at comments. If there's any public comments. Any comments from the Board of Education?
I have a question, a clarifying question. For the personnel committee, since we're not doing that and you want stuff uploaded, just want clarification on what you would like so you don't need the fact sheets, we don't need any of that now, correct, for hiring or
Oh, right, I know what you're
resignations,
saying.
but you just want what I would typically upload still going there.
So where it would fall in, like it would fall under finance to be approved, and it would fall in there.
We're still gonna do the approvals? Okay. I just wanna make sure I understand.
So if you,
Yeah.
so under the finance folder, if you just do a hires or
Okay. So I don't mess it up. Okay. Thanks.
That's a good question.
Any other comments or questions from the board? I would just like to say I'm very excited about 2025 and thank all of you for your time and your dedication, and we're going to hit the ground running, and I see a lot of good things, and I'm very excited to work with all of you, so thank you, all of you.
Mrs. Smith, I'd like to echo that sentiment. I'm looking forward to working with some of the current board members who have been along for the journey since I've come on as superintendent, but I'm very much looking forward to working with our new board members as well. I just feel a sense of some great energy and positivity, optimism for the district, and I'm looking forward to that. So thank you very much.
Mrs. Smith,
Mr. Burrow.
I gotta find the paper, so I don't know if it's in here or not. I don't know the wording.
that's the.
I know.
Accounts.
I move that the Board of Education adjourn the educational meeting at 6:54 p.m. on Tuesday, January 7th.
Oh, that's the.
Support.
Support.
Motion and support. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah, so these are the, so in my motion it was.
I
Is there anything that had already been memorized?
Russell, Cindy, and Justin need a picture of you. If you can get a picture, the paper's asking.
Oh, sure.
So, like, I promised I would get a picture of the three of you.
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
So,
I knew what I wanted to do, but it's all moved still, right? I'm learning.
Well, and as we go through and we do committees and we get those set up, generally one will make
we're gonna do.
the motion and another person from that